Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7.
Today we're going to try and strip away some of the comfort of our daily assumptions. We're going to look at the universe with eyes wide open.
And I mean really open, staring right into the abyss, basically.
We're
We
not-
are tackling what might be the ultimate tension in the human experience, that clash between what makes us feel good, safe and significant, versus what is actually objectively true.
And to do that, we're sort of walking through the mind of the late, great Carl Sagan.
We've got a whole stack of notes here based on a famous talk he gave. It's almost a manifesto, really, on why humanity needs to rethink its relationship with religion, with skepticism, and with the cosmos itself.
It's just a fascinating exploration because Sagan isn't just, attacking belief for the sake of it. He's advocating for a specific kind of intellectual courage.
Right.
He pushes us to define what we even mean when we say the word God. He warns us about the dangers of what he calls organized ignorance.
And he argues that skepticism, which, we often think of as cold or cynical, is actually the deepest form of love for the truth.
Yes.
It's heavy, it's definitely controversial, and it challenges the very way we think about our place in all of this. So let's dive in.
Into it.
Okay, so let's start where Sagan always starts, with the sheer, just mind-boggling scale of everything. He throws out these numbers that just kind of break your brain a little.
He does. He reminds us the Earth is about 5 billion years old, the galaxy. Maybe 10 to 12 billion.
And his point is that we, humans, our history, our drama, all our religions, we are the product of this grand evolutionary sequence. We're just the latest thing to happen.
We are the latecomers, exactly.
But that's the problem, isn't it? We don't feel like we're ancient stardust. I don't feel like I'm part of a 12 billion-year-old process. I feel like a guy who's worried about traffic.
Well, and that is the absolute crux of it. Sagan talks about this common sense trap. He argues that our intuition, the thing we rely on every single day to make sense of the world, it's biologically limited. It's a trap.
A trap. How? How so?
Well, just think about where our brains even came from. Our common sense evolved to deal with a very, very specific slice of reality.
On the savannah.
On the African savannah, yeah. We needed to understand things that were, say, a tenth of a millimeter, like a little bug up to a few kilometers long, like a landscape. And we needed to get time frames from a fraction of a second to dodge something up to a single lifetime.
So basically, we are built to understand throwing a rock, running from a tiger, finding a mate. That's the human scale.
Precisely. That is what our intuition is for. But when you start talking about quantum physics, particles that are 10 to the minus 13 centimeters.
Things my brain can't even picture.
Right, or cosmology, where you're dealing with billions of light years.
Yeah.
Our common sense just fails. It wasn't built for that.
Which is why quantum mechanics sounds like magic to a lot of us, or why the idea of the universe expanding just feels impossible to really visualize.
Exactly. Sagan says, and I'm quoting here, it's very reasonable that intuition is not adequate to the task. We're trying to use a tool that evolved for the savannah to understand the entire architecture of the cosmos.
It's like trying to navigate a microchip with a map of New York City.
That's a perfect analogy. The tool just doesn't fit the terrain.
And that disconnect, that really sets the stage for everything else, doesn't it? If our gut feeling is wrong about something as basic as the size of the universe, what else is it wrong about? Before we go further down that rabbit hole, if you like my channel, please subscribe and press the like button.
It really is the fundamental starting point. I mean, once you realize your intuition has limits, you have to find a better method to find the truth. You can't just feel your way to the answers anymore.
And that brings us right to the showdown, the scientific method versus, religious doctrine. Sagan draws this incredibly sharp distinction between them, and it's not about the answers they give, it's about the entire process.
It is. And he frames science not as a body of facts, but as a self-correcting process. That is the key phrase.
Self-correcting. So it expects to be wrong.
It assumes it might be. That's the whole point. Sagan says science is the aperture to finding out what's right. In science, if you have a new idea, it has to survive the most rigorous standards of evidence. It's a gauntlet. You have to prove it.
Whereas in religion, or even politics, he notes that, suppressing uncomfortable ideas is pretty common.
Very common. He says in those fields, the assumption is often that the truth is in hand.
Right. We already have the answer. It was handed down by some revered figure, so stop asking questions.
Which just creates stagnation. I mean, if you believe the perfect truth was written down 2,000 years ago, what progress is there to be made? You just analyze the text.
And Sagan contrasts that with science, where being willing to admit you're wrong is the whole game.
It's the engine of progress.
There's this quote from the talk that really, really hit me. He says, "The thing about science is, first of all, it's after the way the universe really is, and not what makes us feel good."
It's a brutal distinction when you put it like that, isn't it?
It is. Because we all want to feel good. We want to feel special. We want to be the main character in the story.
But the universe is under no obligation to comply with our wishes. I mean, Sagan points out that every single human culture has a creation myth. And they're fascinating, they're beautiful.
But they all contradict each other.
They're mutually inconsistent, yeah. One says the world came from a cosmic egg, another from a giant, another from the sea. They can't all be right.
And Sagan's argument is that cosmology, the scientific study of origins, is the first time we've had a method that actually makes progress toward the real answer, not just the one that comforts our little tribe.
And that's where the friction comes in. Because sometimes the real answer, it isn't very comforting at all. It makes us feel small.
So we have this tool, science, and it works. It builds our technology, it cures diseases, it explains the stars. But, and this is where it gets really dicey, we live in a society that depends on this science, but most of us don't understand it.
This is what Sagan calls the combustible mixture. It is the central paradox of the modern age. We're surrounded by these formidable technological powers. We're being propelled forward at an accelerating rate.
But the general public, most of us just look at science and say, oh, I'm not good at that.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not a math person.
Right, yeah.
Oh, physics, I don't get it.
Right.
But just think about the implications of that in a democracy. If the public doesn't understand the science, but the science is what determines our future, our climate, our medicine, our weapons, then who is actually making the decisions?
He says if we can't ask the right skeptical questions, we're just, what was the phrase he used?
Up for grabs for the next charlatan.
Oof, that's a heavy line.
It is. And it doesn't matter if it's a political charlatan or a religious one.
Yeah.
If you can't interrogate the people in authority, if you don't have that skeptical toolkit, you are vulnerable.
He brings up Thomas Jefferson here.
Yeah, he quotes Jefferson, who said that just enshrining rights in a constitution isn't enough. People have to be educated. They have to practice skepticism. Otherwise, we don't run the government runs us.
So ignorance isn't just a lack of knowledge, it's a loss of power.
It is a loss of agency, exactly. And this skepticism, this demand for evidence, it naturally leads Sagan to the biggest topic of all. The question he got asked constantly.
Do you believe in God?
The big one.
And I love his approach here, because most people just want a yes or a no. But Sagan stops the whole conversation. He basically says, hold on, your question makes no sense until we define our terms.
It's that scientific precision coming out. He argues the word God is so ambiguous it's almost useless. He calls it social lubrication.
Social lubrication, like it just greases the wheels of conversation.
Sort of. It covers over massive differences. You and I could both say, I believe in God, and we'd smile and nod and think we agree. But you might mean a bearded man in the sky, and I might mean the laws of gravity.
So we're not actually agreeing on anything. We're just using the same label to avoid a difficult conversation.
Exactly. We're avoiding truth, not finding it.
So let's break down the categories he offers, because this was so helpful for me. He lays out this whole spectrum of definitions.
Right. So first he describes the anthropomorphic God.
The classic image, the one you see in paintings.
An outsized, light-skinned male with a long white beard sitting on a throne, keeping a tally of every sparrow that falls. The king, the father.
And Sagan's take on this is, well, it's pretty blunt.
It's very blunt. He says there's simply no evidence for this. If someone has compelling evidence for a giant man in the sky, he'd be fascinated to see it. But until then, it's a claim without support.
Okay, so that's one end of the spectrum, the literal person, God. Then he pivots to what he calls the Spinoza or Einstein God.
Which is very, very different. People love to quote Einstein saying things like, God does not play dice.
Yeah, and religious people will say, see, Einstein was on our side.
But Sagan clarifies what Einstein actually meant. When Einstein used the word God, he wasn't talking about a person. He was talking about the sum total of the physical laws of the universe, the grand, intricate, beautiful logic of physics itself.
And Sagan says, well, that God obviously exists.
Of course, it would be insane to deny that there are laws of physics. Gravity exists. Electromagnetism exists. But Sagan's question is, why do we need to use the confusing label God for that? Why not just call them the laws of physics?
It does seem like it just muddies the waters. It tricks people into thinking Einstein believed in the bearded man when he really just believed in, E mini Cior.
Precisely. And then there's the third type he mentions,
Yeah.
the one some of the U.S. founding fathers liked, the deist God.
The do-nothing king. I love that phrase.
It's the idea of a creator who starts the whole universe, lights the fuse on the Big Bang, sets the physical constants just right, and then just retires, goes away.
Leaves the scene.
Doesn't answer prayers, doesn't intervene in human history, doesn't care you pass your exam, he's not involved.
So praying to the deist God is completely pointless because he's not even listening.
According to that model, yes. So when someone asks, do you believe in God? Sagan's point is you learn absolutely nothing from their answer until you define which of these wildly different concepts you're even talking about.
It really exposes how lazy our language can be. But let's get to his personal philosophy, because he doesn't just tear down definitions. He talks about what it means to live with this kind of skepticism. He defines faith as belief in the absence of evidence.
And for Sagan, that's just an intellectual mistake. His rule is simple. Withhold belief until there is compelling evidence.
But that's hard. I mean, that's emotionally very difficult.
It is. He totally acknowledges that. He calls it a wrenching obligation, that we have to accommodate ourselves to the way the universe actually is, not how we wish it would be.
He tells this incredibly personal story about his parents to illustrate this. He lost them both years before this talk, and he says he misses them terribly. He'd give anything for 5 more minutes with them.
This is such a crucial moment in his whole argument. He says, I would love to believe that their spirits were around. He wants it. He feels that emotional pull just like anyone else. But he realizes that because he wants it so badly, he is uniquely vulnerable. He says that when a medium or a channeler claims they can contact his dead parents, he has to reach for added reserves of skepticism.
Wow, that's profound. Usually we think passion should lead us to belief. Sagan is saying your passion, your desire, should lead you to more scrutiny because it makes you so easy to fool.
That's the discipline. He knows that if he drops his guard, he's not finding his parents. He's just getting his money taken or his emotions manipulated. He's choosing the hard truth over the comforting lie.
It's about a kind of intellectual dignity, really, not letting yourself be deluded even when you want to be.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, does this mean he just hates religion across the board? Because he does clarify this point.
No, and that's a nuance people often miss. He explicitly endorses the ethics, the poetry, the literature, and the compassion found in so many religious traditions. The morality of treating the least fortunate with kindness. He's all for that.
So where's the conflict then?
The conflict arises, he says, solely when religion pretends to know something about science.
So an example would be...
Well, he brings up the Bible. He points out that the science in the Bible, the cosmology of the biology, was largely borrowed from the Babylonians around 600 BC.
Which was the best science available at the time.
Right. It was state-of-the-art in 600 BC. But we've learned a few things in the last 2,600 years. The trouble comes when biblical literalists insist that the Earth is only 6,000 years old, or that evolution didn't happen, because a text from antiquity says so.
It's a clash between a static text and a dynamic process of discovery.
That's it, exactly. And he does mention that many mainstream groups, Roman Catholicism, Reformed Judaism, they've largely made peace with the Big Bang and evolution. They interpret the old texts as metaphor.
But the fundamentalists?
The ones who demand literal truth. That's where the combustible mixture ignites. They're making political and scientific choices based on severely outdated information.
And this brings us back to that question he asked that really just sticks with you. Who is more humble?
I love this framing. Is it the person who says, I have this book, it's the absolute truth, and the entire universe must fit inside these pages?
Or is it the scientist who looks at this vast 12-billion-year-old universe with an open mind and says, I don't know, show me, I'll accept whatever you have to teach me, even if it contradicts everything I believed yesterday?
It just flips the script completely. Usually, religious people claim humility, and scientists are painted as arrogant. Sagan argues the scientist is the truly humble one because they submit to the evidence, not to their own desires or traditions.
So at the end of the day, what does this all mean for us? For the bunches listening right now, Sagan's painting a picture of a universe that's vast and old and kind of indifferent to our feelings. That sounds a little lonely.
It can be. Sagan admits that as the old myths fade, we are left on our own.
No savior coming from the sky to fix everything.
But he flips that too. He says being on our own is much more responsible. Think of it like this. When you're a child, you expect your parents to come and fix your problems.
Right. Break a toy, dad fixes it.
But if no one is coming to save us from ourselves, from our wars, our pollution, our own ignorance, then the responsibility falls on us.
We have to save ourselves.
It's actually empowering. He calls it Pascal's bargain run backwards. Instead of betting on God just in case, we bet on ourselves. We make our best efforts. And hey, if we're wrong and some savior does show up to help,
Great. That's a bonus.
it's a bonus.
Yeah.
But waiting for one is just negligence.
It demands that we grow up as a species.
Exactly. We have to leave the childhood of our species behind and accept the full responsibility of adulthood.
It's really a call to action, a call to learn, to question, and to not be afraid of the answers, even if they don't give you that warm, fuzzy feeling.
And to find the beauty in what's real. The actual universe is so much more spectacular than any myth we ever invented for ourselves.
I think that is the perfect place to leave it. We've unpacked the scale of the cosmos, the definitions of God, and the courage it takes to be a true skeptic.
Lot to chew on there.
Definitely. Thank you for walking us through all that.
My pleasure.
And thank you for listening. If this sparks something in your brain, don't just let it sit there. Go read. Go question.
And ask yourself that final question. Are you looking for what feels good, or are you looking for what is true?
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.